let's take a look at. We have a question from at Rhoda Echo on the X-PAC video. It says, I can't seem to locate a technical detail. I live in Phoenix, and 115 degrees is very common. I see it has an operating range of up to 125 degrees, but what is the inverter protection temperature set to? Well, that's a great question. One thing I will point out just right off the bat is that if we have an operating range of 125 degrees, that the inverter protection is going to be significantly higher than 125 degrees. I mean, we know that from both factory testing, real world examples, and the technical data itself. So we have, if we do have capacity ratings up to, those limits, then you can rest. There's no reason to worry. We can operate at those temperatures. If we can produce capacity at those temperatures, that means that our inverter board isn't tripping. It's not shutting off, that it will continue to operate just fine. In fact, some of these boards and some of the board technology that we have is originally for use in areas that get even hotter than Phoenix, Arizona, from a global standpoint.
One thing that I would add is just be careful where that unit's sitting, because if that outdoor temperature sensor is getting beat on by the sun and you get the air code, you may want to just make sure, shade that thing from the sun and see if, the temperature's a lot lower with it out being in direct sunlight.
Right. Well, I saw an article one time, and this is because, the Arizona, New Mexico, folks, this stuff like this comes up from time to time. And, people will take like an infrared thermometer and point it at the roof and go, hey, it's 190 degrees or whatever up here. What's interesting is I read an article one time that talked about the temperature difference between the roof itself and 6 inches above the roof. And there was such a drastic temperature difference between those two temperatures. Like if you were to elevate those, I know you're not worried about snow necessarily, but you can help those systems perform a bit better by just getting them off the roof some.
Right.
But, rest easy, because much of the equipment that we carry, you can take a look at the capacity charts for cooling on those products. And you can see that we might be able to produce 100% capacity, 105, 110, something like that, which is far and away better than what most equipment rated at 95 is going to produce. So you're not going to look at the same level of D rate that you might see in standard equipment.
Yeah, so I'll say on ductless, the temperature is 58 degrees Celsius or 136 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't remember if it's the same on flex or if it's a little higher on flex. I'll look and get back to you.
Right, gotcha. So as long as we're maintaining good airflow, our heat sink, if it's using a heat sink, or in the case of like the MultiPro Ultra, it's liquid cooled, so that's no longer even a worry. As long as that heat sink's nice and clean, it's not covered up in cottonwood or something like that, you got good airflow, then you should be able to maintain lower than 136 degrees. As those things get hot, it will reduce the capacity to try to keep that temperature low. It's not going to sit there and run and then try to fry itself like you might find in manufacturers who are just recently started making inverter driven equipment, for example.
All right. That's one thing that I always talk about with GREE equipment. GREE equipment does a great job of protecting itself. It's got enough thermistors and other sensing devices in it that rather than just shutting down or going out on air code immediately, it's probably reducing capacity or run rate of the unit. They're going to let that machine run until it reaches a problem that if it was going to stay running, it's going to end up damaging the compressor or something like that on the unit. Right. Therefore, then it's going to shut it down. So yeah, you can very easily get phone calls from, for service where the customer is telling you it's just not keeping up. And it's because there's something wrong with it, but it's not out on air code.
Right. So, yeah. And it's self-protection. So, I mean, I know that some feedback we've gotten in the past has been, like it's kind of aggravating, right? It can be aggravating because you're getting this air code or whatever it is, but it's better to get an air code for self-protection of some kind, right? Right now than it is to get failure 3 months from now.
Well, the other thing too, it's a benefit to the customer too, because rather than shutting down and having no cooling or no heating, it's at least giving them some cooling or some heating until the problem gets addressed. As long as it's not damaging the equipment, it probably is not going to produce an air code. It's not going to shut down.
Right.